no, it doesn't say that on the agenda.
Okay, I'd like to call this special council meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Starcher.
Here.
Coin.
Here.
Heffinger.
Here.
Lamb.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Shields.
Here.
Simpson.
Here. Unfinished business, we have one item. It's the ordinance 114-19. And this is from our last special council meeting that we've talked about the parking deck. Mr. Huber, do you have an update on the status of the parking deck and the recommendation?
As council knows, we received bids from 3 contractors. One was from Mr. Coates, one was from CPS, one was from Rulin. The complication with respect to the bid process had to do with assumptions that Rulin attached to their bid. The assumptions were objected to by the, I think it's the Mr. Fredo, if I have the name right. We stopped the process at that point so that I could look at it. I asked Attorney Greg Beck to also analyze the issue. He represented us involving the previous litigation concerning the bid process, and I'm going to ask him to address the council, and he will tell you his legal reasoning as to what we are going to recommend.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Greg indicated, I was involved in the initial federal litigation, so I had a chance to look at all of these documents and so forth. And as you know, historically, the original bids were presented in March, and ultimately, Rulin had proposed an alternative, and that was accepted by council, but then that process was sort of redone, and so the whole package was resent, and everyone had a chance to rebid. So this time around, Rulin and CPS and Coates, they presented their proposals for the orientations and so forth. But what Rulin had chosen to do this time was what they did the first time, which was not only with their cost proposal did they set forth what they felt it would cost to do the deck, but they attached what they called assumptions, which materially altered the request for a proposal. Now, what happened is that when Rulin's initial proposal was reviewed by Desmond, your consultant, Desmond noted that the assumptions attached to the Rulin proposal the very first time were in conflict with the RFP. And the way that works procedurally is that under Ohio law, based upon your bid documents, you cannot modify a proposal once it's been presented. And so what that means is when Rulin made this new proposal, it also contained the same assumptions. And in my opinion, those assumptions are in conflict with and with your request for proposal, which means that technical proposal by Rulin should be rejected. The reason is that you cannot now allow Rulin to withdraw those assumptions, because that would be fundamentally unfair and would actually fly in the face of the whole competitive bid process. When you have your RFP that says specifically there can be no modifications once the bids are submitted, you have to follow that rule. So now when you look at the Rulin proposal, and both Desmond and everyone looking at it suggests that their proposal is to modify the actual cost that they bid because of these assumptions, there's nothing you can do about it, and the bid is now, in my opinion, in conflict with the RFP and needs to be rejected. So it's my recommendation that council should reject the bid proposal of Rulin and then decide what you're going to do from there.
Now, has there been any discussions with our consultant, Desmond, at Desmond's Consulting? With John, I guess, do we have any more information from him?
I spoke with John Judge today because I'd written him an email because I wanted to know sort of the sequence of events. And the way that the timing worked is that, the technical proposal is made by all of the contractors, and then the interview and the committee process occurs. And then when that's done, then the actual cost proposal is presented. So the timing of that is that after they had done their evaluations, then the cost proposals were open, and that's when those assumptions were should have been identified. And what Mr. Judge acknowledged is that at that instant, there should have been some action on their part to alert council to the fact that despite their evaluation and picking Rulin as the best and lowest, there should have been an immediate acknowledgement that that cost proposal bid was outside the RFP, which would have then switched out, I believe, their analysis of who was the best and the lowest. Because if you really read the assumptions, what it means is that Rulin is allowed to deviate from their cost. So that's the problem. So that's what happened. And I think, right, and Desmond did not do that, and they acknowledged they didn't do that. And so that kind of puts us in this dilemma, which is why I am kind of going through this lengthy process of saying that had that been done, I believe the same recommendation would have been made by Mr. Huber if you would have been alerted immediately once that cost proposal was opened. And then you would have moved accordingly. But now we are where we are. So I believe that my suggestion is that you just reject the Rulin proposal.
So if that's the recommendation about rejecting that proposal, is the next recommendation as far as the award of the successful bidder to follow the second in line, or what happens? Because we ranked them, I guess, based upon the technical proposal and the cost proposal. I would assume what you're saying is that if we have to, if we reject the first in line, you go to the second in line.
Yes, and I am assuming in that analysis, and I would, of course, defer to Mr. Patton on that both the second and third in line are at least in compliance with the RFP. And assuming that that's true, then I believe you should follow in that order.
Okay. Does council have any questions for our council?
I guess the question I'd have is are the other two in compliance?
Mr. Patton?
Yes, they are.
So the recommendation from the administration, I guess, would be to follow the rankings that we've had, and I guess the second in line would be CPS. Is that correct?
That's correct. Based on our evaluation, they did come in second in terms of our point total for both technical and cost proposals.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Patton? So I have ordinance.
I do, John.
Oh, yes, Mr. Simpson.
I believe it was the representative from CPS, I don't know if he's here tonight, when, well, at the last meeting when we stated that one of the reasons the recommendation was for Rulin was because they actually were the ones with the most parking spaces. And that representative from CPS stated that, well, it's the same block, same dimensions. We felt that the parking spaces were too small in Rulin's estimate, but if that's what you want, we can put as many parking spaces in as Rulin. Does that conflict with, I mean, I just want to make sure if I'm voting for the number two choice that, I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I still want, one of the goals is the most parking spaces. Are they allowed to modify their submission from the number of parking spaces that they submitted to add more?
No, no. We're not going to go down that road. I mean, I believe that if you accept the CPS construction proposal, you accept it as it is, and you know when you do so,
Okay.
you're acknowledging.
That answered my question. Thank you.
So there is the update and determination. I mean, everybody saw the drawings. We went through the last meeting. We found this issue that came up, so we tabled it to this meeting. And I don't know if anybody else has any additional questions either for our council or Mr. Patton. Does anybody have any comments on that? So what I'll do is I'm going to put a proposal and an ordinance to accept the second bidder, and then you can vote yea or nay on that.
Okay.
Everybody understand? Okay, so ordinance 11419, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute a design build contract with, and I believe it's CPS Construction, Inc. Is that correct, Mr. Patton?
That's correct.
CPS Construction, Inc. for design and construction of a city hall parking structure.
Move to approve.
Second?
Further discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Shields?
the emergency clause is requested. I move to add it this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
Further discussion on the emergency clause and/or the ordinance. Will the clerk please call the roll on the approval of the emergency clause?
Heffinger,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Coin,
Yes.
Heffinger,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Ordinance 114-19 passes 7-0.
Okay, we got one item of new business. We have ordinance 11619, an ordinance of the City of Council, Medina, Ohio, certifying that when a municipal obligation was incurred, sums were lawfully appropriated and the funds to satisfy the obligation, and sufficient sums currently exist to satisfy this obligation.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Shields?
the emergency clause has been requested. I move to add it this time.
My second includes the emergency clause.
On the emergency clause and/or the ordinance. Mr. Durham?
I guess I can talk about that. We need a PO for Baker Dublacar in order to pay them for the work that they've done in connection with this bid process and litigation that took place in federal court.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion or comment? Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the emergency clause?
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Will the clerk please call the roll on the adoption of the ordinance?
Lamb.
Yes.
Rose.
Yes.
Shields.
Yes.
Simpson.
Yes.
Starcher.
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Heffinger.
Yes.
Ordinance 116-19 passes 7-0.
All right, I believe that's it. That's all, and the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.